It's been another week in racing, it's time to recap it. And who better to do it than Michael and Magic? Two bros/pros who cover the highs and lows of racing around the globe on every one of their shows. Real fans look forward to these guys and their last thoughts, cause they know they're not talking out of their royal ascot. What they say makes sense. So ladies and gents, sit back and relax as Blinkers Off presents The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.
What's up, everybody? I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
And this is a special Racing Dudes Live. We're coming at you live on Wednesday. Well, it's morning for me, 10 a.m. Mr. Somich, we got a big day, closing day at Parx with a Pick 5 carryover of about $390,000. Let's see if we can make some money today.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Parx bettor, but they have a big-time takeout on the Pick 4, so I generally avoid them. They have a jackpot Pick 5, but every now and then you get these days where it makes a ton of sense to play. This is the only bet the entire day. You actually will have a plus expected value versus the takeout. So if you're going to bet horse racing at all today, somehow playing the Parx Pick 5, which is a little bit of a mess, because Stumble Bunnies is the correct way to put this. It's the right bet, which is crazy. It's Parx.
You say you're not a big Parx bettor. I'm going to call bullshit on that just because you're a big tournament player. So I know that you're routinely playing Parx on Tuesdays and Wednesdays during the week.
I do play quite a bit of Parx tournaments. I'm guilty as charged there. So yes, there's definitely some Parx tournaments that I get involved in. So I do know the jockeys and the trainers pretty well, kind of where to look on the long shot, understand the speed bias there that occasionally takes place. So I am watching Gulfstream and hoping this one gets home on the same time. So yeah, it's an interesting day over at Parx.
Well, let's get into it, Mike. We're not going to do a usual Magic Mike Show thing because we're going live looking at something today. So we'll save all that for tomorrow. If you want more on the Magic Mike Show, we'll be live 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern on Thursday. But let's start things off here. It's going to be race 7, if I can pull it up here on the screen.
It's going to be race
That's
6.
not race 7. Race 6, thank you. That's what I meant, race 6. I was looking at the right race. Here we go, race 6 at Parx. Mike, you told me right before we got going, there's some interesting conditions for these first couple of races, and this one is a 7-furlong dirt sprint for 3-year-olds and up who have started for a claiming price of $5,000 or less in 2021 and have never won in 2021. And as you said, it's December 29th, guys. This is your last shot.
Well, it's not just that. You missed the first 2 words after it says starter allowance there. What's the purse of this race?
$50,000.
$50,000.
Holy smokes.
For horses that have not won yet. Oh, and by the way, let's just go 7 furlongs, too, to make it even more of a mess. a unique distance, big-time purses. That means that these are races where you got to look for horses that may be shipping in a couple places, look for trainers bringing horses in, because this is a big-time purse to run for at the $5,000 level.
So as far as what we're going to do today, we're not going to necessarily tell you our whole ticket structure or anything like that. I know Mike's got a grid only up for the Somobomb, so you go to racenews.com and check the handicapping products for that. But we do have a favorite in the 13-6 Cider. There's a couple horses who drew into this because of scratches. We are going to have a fast track, it seems like. Mike, as far as a horse that you might have liked in here, we can start things off talking about at racingnews.com. We have the free picks for every race, every track around the country. And the free pick for this is the rail horse, Double the Heart, 8-1. Aaron's liking an Ontario bred at 8-1 to win this race. So this tells me we need to go hunting for some prices here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I just mentioned, look for horses that are kind of coming in here. Well, this horse is his first time at Parx, run at Woodbine, 18 times now. Hasn't won there. Was it with a 9% barn, and is coming in here is going to run for a 24% barn at Parx. This is the exact type of horse where they're condition hunting, right? They're specifically looking for a spot to have a horse that's probably not good enough to run for 50K, run for 50K. And that's why you bring this horse in from Woodbine, run him at the distance, run him at the track. So I think the one is interesting here, Double the Heart. One thing we're going to talk about a little bit later is like, who's the most public single? What's kind of the favorites we're going to fade? And then who we like as aggressive singles, what races we're going to spread and not spread in. To me, I was actually considering singling the 14 in this spot before the 16 drew in. And because the 16 drew in, I'm going to play a couple deeper here. So I'll start out kind of with the 14, who was my top pick in this race, DT Goody. That last race was almost too good to lose. It was at the same condition level that allowance 5,000. It was just 7 days ago, too. So they're running this horse back. They want to get him in this race for the $50,000 purse. They're taking a little bit of a shot. The horse actually made the lead at the top of the stretch and then just got nailed at the wire. I think you're going to see this horse be forwardly placed. And note that he was in 7th place early, but it was strung way wide because of the post. You're probably going to see the horse a little bit wide again, but this horse is in form. I kind of like that 4-1 price, and you know that it kind of fits at this level. So I'm hoping that DT Goody can get there. I mentioned the 16 Septum Severus. That's the other horse that I'm interested in here right off the draw. I was probably going to be aggressive here in single to 14 if the 16 doesn't draw in. The 16 does draw in. That race 7 days ago that this horse is coming out of, as well as Get the W. This was the favorite at 2-1. It was the first off a 2-month layoff for a 6-year-old horse. And if you look at who this horse has been running against, it's just better. I mean, a lot of these have been running in non-winners of one in a year, races like that. This horse came out of $10,000 N1X, ran in 7,500 N1 a year, and then 5,000 N1 year. Before that was running in $10,000 and $25,000 claimers. So you just have a little bit of a class size here on these 16. I think the second off the layoff should hopefully have a little bit more fitness into this horse, even with a quick turnaround.
What do you think about the 6 horse here? Didn't do it. This is a horse, especially with an 8-1 price, I'm pretty interested in. Is cutting back. As far as the time form early pace rating goes, does seem to have a slight edge here. Is this a horse that could, especially at 8-1, be someone that we see go gate to wire and should at least be on a ticket?
Yeah, this is one of those that I think is interesting because you've got buyer figures back class at Gulfstream Park in 2019 to tower over this field if we can somehow run back to that. Steve Kalleward is a trainer that doesn't have a ton of horses that run at Parx, only 33 starters this year out of 234, and he owns part of this horse. So the fact that we're running in this spot seems like it's a good spot for Steve to get his own horse in a race where he's looking to get a little bit of an overlay value in that purse like we discussed with the 50,000. So I think the 6 horse, if you're going to spread in this race, is definitely one of those you kind of have to include in that because you have speed. You've got a horse that's closer to the rail. You have a trainer that also owns the horse. It makes a lot of sense to include the horse.
Any other horses here that you want to talk about? Or are you ready to move on to the second leg here?
The only other one I think we got to mention here is the 5 horse, Fast Negotiations. This is one that was brought in from Woodbine, ran $12,500 claimer, then $7,500 claimer. Now it's dropping in here. The last 2 races have been atrocious, but we're getting a jockey upgrade here. We're getting second-time blinkers, and Lewis Linder is one of the trainers that I think has definitely been targeting these races. He's one of the best trainers at Parx, and he knows that these races are in the condition books. I think it's interesting that you're seeing this horse end up in this spot. I wouldn't completely ignore the 5 Fast Negotiations here as well.
This next leg here, I feel we can talk about more later, but it feels like a race. If you were going to single, there is a horse that, depending on how the pace shapes up, could be pretty dangerous if she can hold on. But we've got a 6.5 furlong sprint on the dirt for fillies and mares 3 and up, which have started for a claiming price of $5,000 or less in 2021 and have not won 2021. And a $50,000 purse. So we're seeing a half furlong short of what the males were doing in the previous race here. Your 2-1 favorite is the 6 horse Indian Bella, and this is the one that I think some people might single. Some people in the public might single because there isn't an overly fast pace, and she does look like she can keep running. But where did you go here?
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, this is going to be my most public single. I think this is going to be the heaviest single horse in the sequence. We'll talk about more about that later and how to structure tickets around that and if you're trying to be contrarian or not. I do think the 6 is probably your most likely winner in this spot, but I think you're going to pay an awfully short price to be able to try and use the horse or get the horse home. So it's one of those where I respect Indian Bella, but I don't necessarily love the price. It's one that I'm going to use, but I'm not going to single. I don't think it's the best spot for singling here because I don't think the horse is an absolute lock. I'm not going to go very deep here either, though. I do think the 6 is a good horse, but when I look at this again, and this is the exact same conditions here as that first race, except it's for the ladies instead of the boys. So it's that $50,000 purse, $5,000 non-winner, can't have won 2021, must have been a $5,000 claimer. So the conditions are a little bit messy. And I'm again going to go to a trainer that I talked about last race. Look, Lewis Linder has 2 in this spot. Okay, one of them was claimed for $5,000 out of Woodbine after running $15,000 optional claimers, including an $83,000 allowance. So against much better, the 11 horse Forest Halo and the 12 horse Paquette, also coming out of Woodbine, also headed to the Lewis Linder barn. The 11 gets Silva, who is the best jockey, and the 12 gets Barrios, who is a jockey that I don't love as much. And because of that, I favor the 11 a little bit more than the 12, but both of them I think are awfully live. The only reason either have qualified for this race is the last race. It's the only time they've been in for $5,000. Both of them are coming out of Woodbine. Neither of them have touched the fast dirt. That's the big question mark with both of them. But again, Linder is a trainer who would know these conditions were coming up. He's someone who would specifically target these races. If he's bringing in horses, I don't think you can ignore them.
Oldie75 in the chat, by the way, thanks for joining us. If you guys are in the chat and you have any questions or ideas about horses, let us know. We'll talk about them here. It says like the 5, 6, 12. So we talked about 6 and 12, so that works out pretty well. The 5 is Turpie from Moore and Gonzalez at 9-2. Any interest there with Turpie?
Man, no. My main issue with Turpie is, look, the last 2 races were not $5,000 claimers, non-winners, and 1 a year. So really low levels. The horse went off at 27-1 and 8-1. Prior to that, we were 47-1 and 48-1 at Monmouth in the $5,000 claiming level. Now we're swallowing down a 92 price with a field where I think you have horses specifically targeting this race, and you need there's not a single buyer on the page that I think wins the race either. So you need Turpie to improve. Now, maybe you can make an argument, third time Parx, the late 5-year-old season, but to me, there's no logical improvement on the 5. And I think you're paying way too short of a price. I'd much rather have a horse like the 11 Forest Halo than the 5 Turpie.
But yeah, thanks for posting those. And like you saw, Mike definitely agreed on the 6 and the 12. Race 8 here. This is where things get a little bit more interesting and more exciting, because now we go to the 2-year-old stakes, starting with the Parx Futurity. For 2-year-old fillies, going 7 furlongs on the dirt. I was pretty sad that Alice Harper scratched here. I was excited to see what she might be able to do against this group. But you end up still having a pretty deep one. Misinterpret, the 10 horse, is going to end up being the 5-2. Well, 5-2 right now in the morning line, because by the best, the 9-5 favorite scratch. So a lot of holes here, but your buddy Linder's got the 9, 2 dogs, 4 cats. Really great name. I like that. Any interest there with 2 dogs, 4 cats?
I mean, maybe adding the blinkers, but I'm not a huge Mastery fan. I also think this is a pretty tough spot to try and break your maiden, although, 2 next out winners in those first 2 races and $107,000 maiden special weight at Parx. How often do you see that? Followed by a $42,000 maiden special weight. So pretty good races in those first 2. The blinker ad's interesting. Look, to me, Misinterpret's the key to this race. I'm going to fade this horse. I realize that this is one of those horses going to be a favorite. I think this is probably your other logical, most singled horse. There's a huge scratch in this spot. The 12 horses out of this race by the best, who was 9-5 and probably would have been your 6-5, 7-5 favorite, taking the mass majority of the money outside of the 10 horse Misinterpret. Look, when I look at Misinterpret, I've got an issue with the horse. The horse has been bet in almost every single start. People are going to see the grade 1 and the grade 2 are coming out of, but we weren't competitive in either of those and really should never have been in those races. If you go back to the PG Johnson, which is like the win that people will point to, well, you were 75 cents on the dollar in a 7 furlong race off the turf at Saratoga, right?
Against 3 other horses.
So I'm not really going to give you that much credit. And then you go back to the 6 furlong maiden special weight breaker, you beat Lemieux. Lemieux's not that good. Like, I get that, like, Lemieux won next out in maiden special weight level. Yeah, that's great. But Lemieux took a while to break the maiden. I've not been that impressed with. So I feel like you kind of have a paper tiger here, where you have, 2 graded races, which you sucked in. Then you had a race where you got lucky that it came off the turf and you're 1 of 4 horses. You didn't beat that much in your maiden special weight. And now I've got to swallow sub-even money on you. When you take all that into account, I'm going to agree with our buddy Steve down here. I think these are the 2 horses to beat. I'm probably only going 2 deep here. And later we'll talk about, this is the race I think if you want to aggressively single, this is where you'll go. And we can talk about that in a second. Look, the 3 horse, the 2 was a huge scratch, Alice Harper, for the 3 stand-up comic. Because now stand-up comic is lone speed. And stand-up comic is an interesting one where it wins at 4.5 furlongs on the dirt, then comes back and is able to win at 5 furlongs on the dirt. Then we go over to turf. And neither of the 2 turf efforts go that well. But look, running in a 5 furlong, $120,000 stakes race at Saratoga is awfully tough. And then coming back in a 6 furlong, $100,000 stakes race at Belmont's awfully tough. We're getting back to the best surface. This is a practical joke, who we talked about all the time. I love me some practical jokes. I think this horse has a chance of making it happen. I like the 3 horses alone speed here. I think the 4 is the one who's going to be able to sit the perfect trip behind the 3 if the 3 just does give it up in the lane and folds like a lawn chair.
And that's exactly what I think is going to happen too. The 4 is my favorite horse in this race. I really like the 4 because, especially with the scratch of the 12, the pace setup changes a bit from where you see here on the screen. Aaron for racenews.com. If you missed it before, we have free picks for every race, every track around the country. Aaron's free top pick for this race is the favorite, number 10, Misinterpret at 5-2, and it's Todd Pletcher. And Kendrick Carmouche riding it is, Parx Stakes race. Like, that's a horse that you should probably love. But I'm with Mike. I really like Collins Great Lady. We're cutting back at Parx. A dirt mile is 2 turns, so we're cutting back to 1 turn. And I think, like you said, Mike, I think the 3 is going to set the pace. And if, I'm assuming when the 3 kind of gives it up a little bit late, 4 should be right there. And if the 4 is good enough, cutting back from a 2-turn mile to a 7 furlong sprint, 4 should be right there to pounce.
Yeah, Danny Velasquez, not a slouch. Also love the fact that that horse debuted against the boys before breaking its maiden against the girls. So Danny Velasquez thought quite a bit of Collins Gray Lady. If the 3 can get the distance, I think the 3 wins. If he can't, I think the 4 is the most likely winner after that.
See what we got in the chat. Kevin Noah says, like the 9 previous run here. The 9, there was one of that was the Louis Linder horse. One of 4 maidens in this race. Like, there's a decent chance a maiden wins this race. That's not good.
I think he means the 8. Because the 8 is the one coming
from
there
you go. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So, and the 8 was one I actually looked at, Captain's Daughter, who was closing twice. The problem I have with the 8 is I'm not sure the pace is going to set up. I think the 8, who was 10 and 11 lengths off the lead at the half mile points of the last 2 races, is going to have a lot of work to do. And Parx is not a track where you want to have a lot of work to do when there isn't a really burn-up pace up front. So to me, it's one of those situations where I think that the 8 has a shot at winning the race, but the 8 is going to really need the 3 and the 4 to go and push, or the 3 and the 4 to both stop. And if so, you're going to have to beat the 10. And so to me, the 8 is kind of up against it, where you have to either think the 8's better than the 10 and be able to get it done, or the 3 and the 4 are both going to go back, catch up, and the 10's just not going to be good enough.
Boy, a lot of love for the 8 here in the chat. Yeah. Kevin started something.
I wonder what the 8 goes off at. I mean, if there's this many people who are interested, and Cindy is very good, Kevin's very good, Oldie's very good. They've joined us on some of the Good Chalk, Bad Chalk shows and have great opinions. So, like, the 8's going to get some play here. It's going to be interesting to see what that 92 morning line goes off at, especially after the scratch of the 12th.
Could make it ultimately not worth playing if you're going to use some chalk. At least if you're going to use some more chalk in this race, you definitely don't want to do that. I think that horse is fantastic if you want to do like an exacta where you use like you and I like the 4. So if you went 4-8 cold exacta right there, I think that's a solid one, because I think the 8 never been off the board in 4 dirt starts, but only 5 dirt starts, but only 1 victory, and 3 of those were seconds. So maybe the horse just kind of loves to run in place and not exactly win, but we'll see what happens there. Any other horse you want to talk about, or should we move on?
No, I mean, look, man, I was going to spread in this race, and now I'm not. You know, with the scratch of the 12, I think it really opens it. It really shuts down the different options. I'm going to probably stick to just the 3 and the 4.
Let's take a look. By the way, let me go back to, I forgot to mention this before, but in race 7, the free pick that Aaron has on the website is number 12 pick out at 6-1, which is a horse that we were all excited to talk about in that race. Let's move on to race 9 here, the 4th leg of this big pick 5 carat, well, I guess mandatory payout because it is closing day at Parx. The Parx Juvenile Stakes, same thing as the Futurity, but just for the boys, going 7 furlongs on dirt here. A little bit more interesting, a bit of a field script for Grand Motion is probably going to be your favorite, the 3-1 favorite on the morning line. This is a horse that I really like, but I don't know that the price is going to be worth playing in here unless I ended up singling. But man, it really caught my attention that Jose Ortiz has ridden this horse twice. This horse threw Jose Ortiz off, and he got back on and rode to victory, and now comes to Parx to ride. That's just too much for me to want to pass up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting horse, especially like you mentioned, he threw him. This horse was loose pre-race last time to break its maiden. So it was running on the track all by itself. And one of the things, like, I hate horses that break through the gate, hate horses that get loose because they're expending energy. And it's tough to be able to win after expending energy, especially as a maiden. That's what Script was able to do. So, it's one of those where the number didn't come back that strong. But to me, you still have to respect the horse a little bit. Man, this was another race where I think was kind of decimated by scratches. If you go to the outside there, the 11, the 12, and the 13, all horses that I thought were playable, all out of the race. So that kind of shortens us up quite a bit here. I have a problem with a 3-1 price on Script. It's one of those where you look at this race, and I would think that you're going to get like 5-1 on that horse because of the numbers. To me, I kind of like the 6 Speaking here with Corrales up, who doesn't ride very often here. At Parx. It's actually going to be the first time Corrales has ridden all year at Parx. So the fact that he's following this horse from Monmouth and to Belmont and here, I think says a lot about Speaking. Additionally, look, getting burned up on the lead on the Nashua is nothing to be ashamed of. That was Rockefeller there. Rockefeller was a Baffert horse that got drafted pretty early in our draft in the Derby points, or the Derby draft, so the 3-year-old draft. So it's a horse that's on the Derby trail that Speaking had to go head-to-head with early. Look, there is not a Derby trail horse that is in this race. So for me, Speaking, especially if we can get anywhere near that 6-1 price, I kind of think it's a pipe dream, is a pretty competitive horse. I also like the one right to the outside. It's another practical joke horse. This one was the favorite in 3 of its 4 races. The only time it wasn't, it lost to Speaking at 6 furlongs at Monmouth. This is one where we're adding blinkers, which I think is awfully interesting. So I think you're going to see a little bit more speed from the 7-horse practical coach. My big worry here is this thing just falls apart. And if so, who do you take?
Mm-hmm. A couple things I want to bring up. Oldie says, and it's updated in DRF, but not in Equibase, at least not right now. Jose Ortiz he probably just isn't going to Parx today. He is off of that. Jose Vargas Jr. is going to ride. One thing, because this comes up sometimes, is if there's a jockey change, do you change your opinion on that horse? And something that Aaron taught me a long time ago is I don't care who picks up the ride. I care who was going to ride it in the first place. So that Jose Ortiz was going to originally come to Parx to ride the horse, the jockey change doesn't mean anything to me. I'd still have that same opinion. What is your opinion when something like this happens?
Well, this one is telling, right? Jose Ortiz keeping this mount, it tells you the horse is probably very good, right? It's like Corrales keeping this mount on speaking and coming in. Never ridden at Parx before, and he's going to ride this race, choosing this spot. And it's not like this is $1 million race. It's a $100,000 race. He thinks this horse has a future. And now maybe as a sprinter versus a Derby horse, right? We're not really sure, but it definitely shows some confidence there. The fact that Ortiz isn't there tells me that he doesn't think this is one that he needs to either A, ride to be on for stakes races down the line, because really riding this race isn't what's important. It's riding the greatest stakes later, which have bigger purses if you do think the horse is going to be that good. So in this spot with Jose Ortiz, I think it's a little bit of a downgrade, but it's not one where it's like, oh, well, I'm definitely off the horse now. I don't think it would be that big of a drop.
Vargas was named on the 9-horse Uncle Buddy, who scratched one of the 18 scratches in this race. Quick note on Practical Coach, and we can move on. I read a quote from Butch Reed, the trainer, that they were adding blinkers because he said the horse has got a world of talent. In the morning, they have a problem getting it out of him in the race day, so they put the blinkers on him for a work, and he seemed to kind of wake up a little bit. So hopefully that works for him. So I'm with you. I like 7-8 here. You're going with the Practical Joke horses, which is hey, listen, we're going one turn, which makes as soon as they start going 2 turns, I think that's when we back off of them.
Yeah, a little bit. I do want to address this comment too, because a lot of people like the 2 in the chat here. I actually like the 2 as well. I don't think Dance Code needs the lead though. If you look at the maiden breaking score, we did stalk second and then was able to get the job done closing late. And last time out, the horse was just a million miles wide around the turn and comes from 10th all the way to 4th. The top 3 finishers in there, Wit, Uncle Buddy, and Vinejet, 2 of the 3 scratch out of this race. Vinejet, the 4-horse, stays in. But I think with a better trip, the 2 horse is going to be able to make some more noise. And also note that this horse went from a Parx maiden special weight right into the Grade 3 Sanford against Wit, where it wasn't a bad race at all. I mean, missed the break, so he had trouble early, still able to run on and ended up in 3rd there. Goes to the Saratoga Special, where was on that ridiculous 21-2, 44 and change pace where everyone quit, and then High Oak was able to come charging late. So not really that concerned about that one. Was able to come back and beat Practical Coach next time out. Obviously, if I like the 7, you got to kind of like the 2 here. So I do think the 2 is interesting in this spot as well as a horse I'll be using.
Free pick over at racenews.com is the number 7 Practical Coach at 6-1. So especially with all those scratches, I don't think we're getting 6-1 on that horse. That's the thing that sucks is that the bunch of scratches when they're 20-1s, you're like, okay, whatever. The odds at least aren't going to be affected by that. But when you keep losing all these short prices, it kind of hurts. Oh, well. But anyways, at least we're all on the same train here. Let's see if we can keep that going. The final race of the Pick 5, the Big Philly 5, the last one of the meet for Parx. Race 10, boy, we got some real winners here, Mike. Horses that have never won for a lifetime in for a $7,500 claiming tag, $22,000 purse, sprinting 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. Your buddy Louis Linder with the 7-2 favorite, right? Number 4, Mondays with Mike. Boy, Mondays with Mike. Yeah. This feels like a hunch play. We got to single this horse, right? 3-year-old facing olders. Let's do it.
Let's chuck him. Yeah, I'm not using the 4. No thanks. And this is I do love me some Louis Linder, as you learned earlier in the sequence. But this horse I think is just too short of a price, and I can't find a single effort that wins this race, which to me is a huge problem. Now this horse is going to take money because it's coming out of a $12,500 claimer, dropping into this $7,500 level where it ran well. But you know what it did before that, Magic? Mondays with Mike ran at the 7.5 level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 times in a row and did not win. And then last time it won was at a mile at this distance, but that was with Silva, who I just mentioned was the best jockey here. He doesn't see fit to ride here. I'm not that interested in the favorite here. I'm going to try and fade him a little bit. I kind of like the 9, Impactful. I don't love that I like the 9 because we have a 4% jockey for the Europe. But that last race was pretty good. We're getting the bug weight, the 7 pounds off, which I do think will matter in this spot. The horse has some speed, but can be tactical with it. I think that the mile distance was just a little bit too long. Cutting back with some tactical speeds, I think, is dangerous. if you go back to that race 4 back, that's good enough to win. You go back 3 back, that's going to be close to it. The last race was close to it. So you got multiple races there that are good enough to win this, and this is just not the most consistent group. So if you can find 2 or 3 races to point to in the last 5 efforts that are good enough to win, to me, that's a horse you got to like, because you got to take a shot somewhere in here. I think this is one of those races that's pretty tough.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. What about the 7 rules? I feel like this is a horse that you're going to know at the top of this stretch real quick if you're going to have a shot, because if this horse is leading at the top of the stretch, you've got a shot. If they're anywhere close to him, that's a bullet that you misfired on that one. But he has the highest time form early pace rating, 104. Is getting a 7-pound bug jock aboard. It's definitely clearly going to be sent to the lead. And 2 of the horse's 3 career wins were at this distance. The horse has raced 39 times. 2 of the 3 wins were at this distance. That tells me this might be sneaky at 15 to 1. Worth a shot at least, right?
Yeah, look, if you're spreading in this race, you don't use the 7, you're making a mistake. I think that's the simple answer, right? I mean, if you go, Time Form has the early lead. Equinedge has this as a lone speed horse and a horse that needs the lead. So you have lone speed and need the lead. That's a key there, as well as the highest GSR ratings for the best horse bred for this distance. So there's a bunch of different indicators that are pointing toward the 7 rules to be able to take this field wire to wire. I kind of like the 1-horse Moon Pistol because I think the 7's cheap speed. I think if the 7 gets it up, the 1-horse is the one that actually sits the trip. So to me, I feel like if you're spreading, you got to use the 7. If you want to go shorter, the 1 and the 9 were the 2 horses that I really keyed on in this spot, because I think the 1-horse sits the dream trip behind the 7. It's kind of it's interesting. There's lone speed and then there's lone stalker. And the 1-horse is clearly a lone stalker. And when you have a lone speed that likes to give it up and a lone stalker, that really plays out well for the lone stalker. Kind of like that 3-4 we talked about in the 2-year-old race, where the 3 is going to be the lone speed, but the 4-horse is the only one that's going to be behind it, close behind it. So you're going to have a situation where if the 7 doesn't go on with it, the 1 Moon Pistol is going to pick up the pieces first and is going to be the one to catch in the stretch.
Stevens brought that up too in the chat. 7 with a great pace fig. Oldie is the one, says the 1 is who I'm singled to on a B ticket, and also who likes the 1 is Aaron Halterman, the free pick for race 10 at racingdudes.com, where we have free picks for every race, every track around the country. Aaron put the number 1 pistol with a 6-1 morning line on top. So the horse is gonna be third off the layoff, third time with the trainer. It looks like it fits. Again, like you said, Mike, when you get to this bottom level, you gotta pick and choose. Like, hey, here's a race here that might be good. Here's a race from 2019 that can show me why this horse might win this time. These are the lifeblood of the industry, right? These are not great horses, but this is what keeps the lights on.
Well, I think it's this race. Yeah, the 2-horse Cigar Box, I think you could use if you want to spread a little bit here as well. I think the 2 is reasonable with Silva up. A 4-year-old who's run 32 times after today. That's a lot of races for a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of it at Mountaineer, Mahoning Valley, Parx.
Of the year here.
three starts in November.
Yeah.
Oh, well, 2 seconds. I mean, that's not too bad there. Let's see what everybody. Cindy likes the 8. Dame I'm Nice 8/7 in this spot. Any other horses that you want to talk about, Mike, or do we move on to the unique questions that you kind of came up with for this one?
No, let's talk a little bit more about ticket structure.
Sure.
Bree said all race. If I was going to go all in any race, this would be the race I go all in. To be honest, this is a pretty tough race for me, and I don't like the favorite. I think that there's some pretty crazy horses that could win this race if you really want to go nuts here. So this would be my all leg if you're going to go crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you, just because it's the inconsistency for me. With the 2-year-olds, with the stakes, they're inconsistent in that they're inexperienced 2-year-olds, but we can at least project with them because they haven't disappointed us 33 times, like some of these other horses have. So yeah, I agree with you on that one. Definitely a good spread like to start things up. So as far as what the public is going to do, because if we want to make a lot of money and really to nail these big carryover payout days, you've got to zig when everybody else is, or zag when everybody else zigs. So in your opinion, which is the horse that's most likely to be singled by the public in this sequence?
I think you've got 2 of them. So I think the most obvious pick is probably going to come in the 7th race with Indian Bella, or the 8th race with Misinterpret. So those who I think are the 2 horses that you're going to see singled the most. To me, you got to try and beat one of them. And when I say beat one of them, I mean I'm going to leave Misinterpret off all my tickets. If the 10 wins, I lose. And it's going to be that simple in that 8th race. Indian Bella, I do think, stands over this field. I think people are going to be a little more concerned with singling Indian Bella because, like we talked about at the start, this is a race for non-winners of a race in 2021. So it's pretty scary to single horses that hasn't won all year. It's not exactly a warm, fuzzy feeling that you get from it. So, man, the 6-horse I think is going to be heavily singled, but I think because of that, I think that people are naturally going to spread a little more in the first 2 legs because they want to be alive. I think the 10-horse, Misinterpret's going to be the most heavily singled. It's a Pletcher coming into Parx. You get Carmouche up, and the horse has been able to win. So I do think the 10's the most heavily singled. It's probably going to be the one I try and fade as well because I think that's the best way to try and make some coin here.
Quite often when Aaron is giving out the free picks on raceuse.com, he's giving the most likely winner of each race in his opinion. So, quite often it's going to be chalk because chalk wins 33% of the time or something like that. So when Aaron goes with a horse with its chalk, like this case on top, this is a horse that generally I think the public is going to single, and that's nothing to do specifically with Aaron. He thinks that's most likely, so the public is probably going to go the same way. And I'm with you. We talked a lot about that race. We really like the 3 and the 4 in that spot, a little more speed heavy in that, but if the speed falls apart, that is the horse is going to be there to pick it up. But knowing you, Mike, the way you handicap in ticket structure, I would be very surprised if you had been like, yeah, I'm using that horse. No, that's a horse you specifically would like to fade.
Yep. Yeah. And like, Aaron just mentioned the show, Pletcher's going to get bet heavily at Parx. A couple other questions that came in before we kind of go to ours. Kevin, would you ever spend $300 on a ticket knowing there's a mandatory payout? Hell yeah. I mean, I mentioned this at the start of the show. These sequences, and one of the reasons that we're covering it here on Parx on a Wednesday and why we have so many people who are watching and commenting right now, it's kind of incredible. We weren't expecting this many people, is because the takeout is reduced and you have this massive pool. Like, at let's call it a 20% takeout here. If there's $1.2 million bet into the pool, you're actually a plus expected value with that $300,000 sitting in there, meaning that the takeout is going to be less than what's being bet into it. So you're in one of the few situations in horse racing, you're getting a zero takeout bet, which means that you are just competing with everyone else in the pool versus having 20%, 25%, 15%, whatever the takeout is in that specific pool taken out. It's a lot easier to win in this circumstance. That's why I said at the top of the show, if you're going to bet $1 into horse racing today and you're not betting the Parx Pick 5, you're just making your life more difficult as a gambler. Not that I love Parx, not that I love the takeout, but because of the specific situation, this is wildly relevant. And, Kevin jumped in here and said, Oli jumped in. This is one of those spots where, with this big of a pool, which I do think is going to get around 1.5, 300 is not that big of a ticket. And I love the idea of getting groups together too. I mean, I know on some of the Aqueduct Pick 6 carryovers, Belmont Pick 6 carryovers, where it's $1, I have a couple guys that I get with, and we bet bigger tickets into it because it's worthwhile doing. So yeah, if you don't want to stomach a $300 bet, ask some of your friends, see if they want to chip in $20 each. Get 5 of them, and then you're in for 200. They're in for the extra 100. It's a great way to be able to play the sequence with the coverage that you want.
I would just say, if you are going to play, say, a $500 Pick 5 ticket, and you post it publicly, don't go 0 for 5. It's not a great reaction when that happens. Our thoughts and prayers out to you.
It's impressive, though.
I saw that and I was like, that's like I felt like when the Breeders' Cup a few years ago when I bet the winner, or I bet a horse to win and it finished second 6 races in a row. Well, I couldn't have done that if I had tried. I really couldn't have done that. So
I would love to know what the inverse ticket costs. If you used every horse that wasn't used on that ticket, that would have hit the Pick 5, by the way. I wonder what that would cost would have been. And that was a turf race, which is a hard track to handicap too. But yeah, I 0 for 5, no bueno. That's not what. Yeah. Although, to be honest, 0 for 5 and 4 for 5. Same result.
Pay the same. Yeah, they pay the same. They pay the same. It just doesn't look the same on your public record. But hey, I'm not going to speak. There's a reason. I don't have a bankroll for $500 tickets.
4 or 5 pays a golf stream and Keeneland. Thank you, Aaron.
I knew someone was going to do that. Did not expect the dick to do that one. So
that's why I mentioned Turfway though. I did call the track out so that I could be correct about the 4 or 5.
All right, Mike. Well, last thing to talk about here to cover everything else. Your most aggressive single, or you think what is a good aggressive single to use in this sequence?
I mean, to me, the 2 places you single, if you want to get a little kooky, are against the most singled horse, which I actually think is a great spot to single. I do like, if we want to talk about that Misinterpret race, we mentioned Stand Up Comic, who I think is going to be lone speed. The only other speed horse is the 4 Collins Gray Lady, who's coming out of speed at a mile, going 24.48, where the 3 horse is clearly a sprinter speed, and we're only doing 7 furlongs. So I think the 3 Stand Up Comic's loose. If I wasn't going to single Stand Up Comic, I would single Collins Gray Lady here. I think that the 4 is the other aggressive single in this spot, where if you don't think Stand Up Comic can get the distance, which is a concern since we're coming out of a 4.5 and a 5 furlong race, and then 2 turf sprints at 6 furlongs, we're going 7 today. I think Collins Gray Lady is the next horse that you'd want to single. So to me, it's making a decision here. If you got a little more budget, maybe you use both the 3 and the 4. But to me here, it's one of those situations where you can single the 3 or single the 4, get yourself a big edge. The other spot I would do it would be either the 14 or the 16 in the first race. just a general mentality of people in these pools is I'm going to spread in the first race because I want to be alive, right? You hear that a lot. You hear a lot of this spread early, single late. To me, that's just not – look, I get it. You want to be alive, but we just mentioned going 4 or 5, going 0 or 5 is the exact same thing. Getting the first race on but not being able to spread later because you have a bigger opinion in the first but you just want to be alive, it's not a long-term winning solution. So to me, the 14 or the 16 here as a single or going short in this race is another place I might take a shot.
That is a big key, is to find a spot to where if there is let me rephrase this. Start up, beep, 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 rewind, doing this live. A great tactic is what Mike is doing is figuring out what race will everybody try and go deep in, because I've seen you do that before in the shows that we do from Magic Mike's show, where you'll be like, look, there's people are going to go, like, it's usually me. Like, I'll go 5 deeper, I'm going to hit the all button, and you're like, everybody's going to do that. So I'm going to pick 2 horses there. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But from a value perspective, that's why you're doing it, is you're sensing this is where the value is. And honestly, that's you specifically as a handicapper, that's your whole style.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you have to be contrarian to be able to get the huge payouts here. I don't disagree with Alex. There is a massive takeout on that late pick 4, much worse bet, but at least you can bet it back, right? If you do want to single this first race. So, that's you hit it on the head, Magic. Like, you have to separate yourself somehow, and to do that, you have aggressive singles, or you go short in spread races, and you spread in short races. You got to find a way to differentiate yourself. And one of the most common things the public does is, oh, well, this is a low-level claimer or allowance. Haven't won a race all year. I got to spread early so I get alive to these other races where I think I can have a bigger opinion in the 2-year-old stakes races because of the more consistency factor. And that's why I think Misinterpret's going to be so heavily singled. That's why I think people are going to spread so much here in the first 2 legs.
Well, we've got less than an hour now till post time for race 6, which kicks off the Big Philly 5. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good luck if you are playing. Let us know if you're playing. We'd love to hear from you and interact with you while we go through this card. It's a lot of fun. If you liked this, let us know in the comments. Give us a thumbs up. Hit subscribe to the Racing Dudes YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/racingdudes. We're going to have a lot of videos coming up later today. Aaron and I are going to be recording for about a half hour straight, I think. But we're going to have Kentucky Derby previews. We have the Sham Stakes, the Mucho Macho Man Stakes, and the Jerome Stakes that all draw today. They run Saturday, so we're going to have previews for those up on the site. We're going to have in-depth look at Epicenter, who won the Gun Runner Stakes. High five to us, Mike, for drafting that horse. So we're going to have that in-depth, as well as another horse that it was a little bit of a surprise that Aaron wanted to talk about, but okay, we'll do it. He's the boss.
Real quick, if you stuck around this long, let's do a little bit of a T-shirt giveaway. I got some Magic Mike T-shirts back in that closet back there. So just put your top pick under. You got to comment on the YouTube video, and you got to be a subscriber on the Racing Dudes YouTube. Put your top pick for each race. So just one pick / one pick / one pick / one pick / one pick. Whoever gets the most winners gets a free T-shirt. If there's a tie, it's whatever winner pays the most. The highest paying winner, second highest paying winner, third paying winner. If we're still tied, then I'll just give both people a T-shirt or whatever it is. So make sure to comment with your top pick in each race right underneath this video.
I love it. Am I allowed to play?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
mine's getting a little.
You're not going to be the winner.
Ouch. Damn, just cut me real deep. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. It was a lot of fun. Magic Mike Show will be live tomorrow at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. Do you know what we're covering? Do you have any idea?
No.
Gulfstream? Probably. I'm going to guess Gulfstream because we're going to have the Mucho Macho Man Stakes, and they've got a bunch of other ones. So.
Yeah, the Saturday cards aren't out yet except for Oaklawn, and I don't like Oaklawn because there's no turf. But we do have the Smarty Jones, $250,000 race, Dash Attack.
4 Kentucky Derby prep races on Saturday. Oof.
Homebrew, COVID. That's not terrible. Ruggs is in here. Wow, there's 14 horses.
14?
Yeah,
Holy
that's probably a tough one.
Shit.
Well, maybe do Oaklawn, maybe we'll do Gulfstream, maybe we'll do Santa Anita. You'll just have to tune in tomorrow to find out. Like that for a teaser. I'm like Greeny level here.
You'd be your Kevin Feige Jr. over here. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Curtis Kalleward. He is at Somobomb 18, number 1, number 8. Corporate Overlords at Racing_Dudes. If you're into sports betting, Dudes Who Bet Sports is the show that Aaron Halterman does with Papa Dude. So that was live last night. They did an hour-and-a-half show covering all the college bowl games. So if you want to bet college bowl season, make sure you tune into those guys and go subscribe. We'll see you Thursday. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike, and you have until 2 p.m. to comment under the video, just so I have a timestamp.
Good luck, everybody. Win that T-shirt.
The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the a show every week, The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.